This will be the last time you guys see this tank here. I'm going to be taking it down here shortly and have recorded some other videos I'll be sharing about it in the near future, but this is going to be the last iteration of this tank that you're going to see. And since it was my first tank, I figured I'd walk you guys through where it first started and where we ended up at to give an inspiration to you guys to see what is capable of a tank and what different type of layouts you can do within the same tank and how you can keep certain aspects and change different aspects of a tank over time and how it still retains the same shape or look but can be radically changed by just doing a couple of things. So let's start off with when I started this tank, which was in 2019, which is almost 3 years ago now. And we're going to start there and then progress to the current day and what it finally looks like before we tear it down. In the first design of this tank, we have my betta fish named Hannibal. We have that rock style that's going to stay with us for a long time with my 4 Harlequin rasboras, my Amazon sword plants, my crypts, my Anubias, and my Bacopa Carolina, as well as some dwarf Sagittaria. That didn't end up working out too well. And I just wanted to show you guys what this tank started as, and just to give you guys some ideas is that the tank that I have today is not the tank that I always had, and it's been a work in progress and keeping certain things and getting rid of other things. Like that Amazon sword plant is no longer in there obviously, but it is now growing out in an aquaponics system and I'm getting a lot of different babies and it's still being utilized but not in the same way. And you can also see here the same crypts that I've had for a very long time that are still in the front of the tank in those same positions and how much they've grown and filled out over the last 3 years and how many runners they have now in comparison to when they started off, and you can sort of see that progression throughout the entire video of these crypts and how they are progressing. So the next iteration of this tank is the same design as before, I just have added more plants to it. I added some Java ferns, some Anubias, some crypts, and some corkscrew valve. It's the same layout, same fish, but just more plants added into the mix and more algae on all the rocks, which I, to an extent, like the age look that it gets, but at a certain point it becomes too much, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to take the tank down and at least redo the scape and get all the algae off those rocks, even if I was going to use those same rocks over and over again. And you can also still see the undergravel filter that we have here and the hang-on back filter that was in the previous one. So in this, we are also giving a final look to this tank and are tearing it down for a new scape that we have. Like I said, I wanted to get those rocks out and cleaned up and move around some of the stem plants and have cleaned up the look of the tank and tried to contain the corkscrew valve, which in the end it doesn't really work too well because corkscrew valve just gets everywhere. Also, you can see here that I have a couple of shrimp that I've added to the tank, and again, the same layout as before, it just has become more established and things are more defined, and it isn't as sparse as it once looked before with the white rocks and the very few plants that we have. So the next look at the tank that we have here, which is from about mid 2020, I will say, is the same scape that we had before, but we have an acris added into it now, and the Java fern, the Anubias, and the corkscrew valve and the crypts have all grown in really well. You can see that we still have that one little piece of dwarf Sagittaria at the bottom, and that we have some new inhabitants in here, which are some baby plecos. And we're going to be adding in some wood to the scape that you guys will not see in this video, but that I put Java fern and Anubias on to try to make it look more natural and appealing. And we jump ahead again to the same tank a couple months later, where it's become more overgrown with algae, and I was getting tired of that brick or block of Java fern that I had, so I wanted to change things up. And so we did an entire tear down of the tank and put in this huge piece of wood, this huge stump that was found locally by one of my friends, and replanted around that with Anubias and Java fern, and created that rock wall that I still have in the tank to this day. You can also see that I tried to replant the actual cryptocorns back in the same spots and use a smattering of the corkscrew valve and other stem plants in the backside. And you can still see here that I don't have a lot of stem plants, there's still a lot of cryptocorns, a lot of corkscrew valve, and epiphyte plants like Java fern and Anubias. And in this next edition, which jumps forward about to the beginning or middle of 2021, I was no longer liking the piece of wood that I had in there because it was becoming over infested with algae. So I ended up removing that entire piece of wood out, but kept all the plants in the same areas basically. I just bought some Pogostemon octopus and put that in the back to replace the wood, as well as hooked up CO2 in between when that piece of wood was in there and where it is now. I also added in a while back my CPDs, and I've been slowly adding more CPDs to the tank itself. And you can also see I added some more dwarf Sagittaria along the bottom that is starting to fill in the tank. And we have our Elosoma Gilberti in here at this point, and we don't really have any shrimp left in the tank because they all either got eaten either by the beta that I had when I initially stocked shrimp in. I put the beta in afterwards and he still ate a lot of them. And then I also think the Gilberti and the Celestia Proldanios finished off any of the babies. There's still a couple of adults that I see scurrying around in the tank, but I've yet to see any babies in this tank for the last year and a half. So eventually all the shrimp that are remaining here will die out. So this here is the final iteration of the tank. It's a little overgrown right now because I know that I'm going to be redoing it, so I haven't spent a lot of time maintaining it. But we have Pogostemon octopus in the back. We have some Bolbitis in the center front here, some Java fern spread throughout, some Anubias. We have some dwarf Sagittaria up front, a couple different crypts throughout here, our corkscrew valve along this side, and we have some Rotala species growing in here amongst the Pogostemon, and then have some Carolina Bacopa or Bacopa Carolina over in this corner over here. So this is the final iteration, and I will be sad to see this tank go because this is the first tank that I had in this apartment and really enjoy it and all the fish that are in there, but we'll be very excited to see the new tank that is coming, and it's going to be coming out to basically almost over here, which is about another 18 inches. So I'm very excited about that, and we'll be showing you guys that tank here soon once we get this one removed and everything taken off, because that's going to be a process. If you want to see how I do this, let me know in the comments below, as that maybe something that you guys want to see, how to take down a tank and how one goes about doing that, because it's not something that's commonly talked about, and I feel like there are some things that can be beneficial to know when taking out a tank. So with that, I hope you guys have a blessed day. If you guys want to see the first video of this tank ever, I'll leave that in the center here. I hope to see you over in that one. See ya.